Welcome back. I've noticed, I'm in a lot of gardening groups on Facebook, and I've noticed a kind of a trend with some of the things that people are posting, and it's, what do I plant right now? It's so hot. What can you plant in Florida when it's, summertime and it's hot? Is it too late to plant anything? Do I have to wait until fall? Things like that. So I thought maybe I would make a video and talk about it. It depends on a lot of variables. In general, Florida in the summer is very hot, very humid, and usually we get rain every day, every other day. Sometimes it'll be just a shower. Sometimes it can be, I got almost 2 inches of rain yesterday in just one afternoon. So, it depends on, Florida weather is very unpredictable. It depends on a lot of different variables, and especially the sea breeze, because you have the sea breeze coming off of the Gulf of Mexico, or whatever you want to call it now. In Florida, we don't call it Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. We just call it the Gulf. And you have the sea breeze coming off of the Atlantic, and where they meet causes disturbance and causes these thunderstorms to form. So, and like I said, depending on where they form, depending on how bad they get, you may just get, the other day we got a ½ inch of rain according to my rain gauge. Yesterday we got almost 2 inches of rain according to my rain gauge, and this was all in one sitting. So it just all depends. So if you're looking to plant something right now, if you wanted to start something and then plant the seedlings, plant the starts, I'm not really sure exactly what would be the best thing to do there, because I don't usually plant that way. I like to direct sow. But direct sowing, it is somewhat late, I will say. But that doesn't mean you still can't do it. So you need to be looking for things that don't mind the heat and the humidity and the rainfall. For example, right now I still have tomatoes growing from when I planted it back in spring, and they're still producing, but I'm about to, take them down, because with the amount of rainfall that we're getting, they're starting to split. Like, tomatoes will do that. If you give it too much water, or they get too much water, the fruits themselves will get too much water in them, and then you'll see splits along the outside. Sometimes it's not a big deal if it doesn't split all the way and too deep, not that big of a deal. But sometimes it can split open, and then it will start to rot and that sort of thing. Not to mention, as it heats up in the summertime, the pest pressure increases. So I've got a lot of stink bugs on my tomatoes right now, and that's only going to get worse as summer goes on. So I'll be taking my tomatoes down, because they're just I'm not able to keep a bunch of them anymore, because they're either splitting or they have pest damage or something like that, like bad enough pest damage that I don't want to eat them. So I would say, right now is not the time to plant something like tomatoes. Now is not the time to plant something like potatoes. Potatoes don't do well with the Florida summer. It's difficult to plant something in, talking about cucumbers or squash. If you were going to do that, you needed to do it back in the spring. Because it just gets too hot and humid, because you're going to, a lot of your squash vines and cucumber vines and stuff like that are susceptible to powdery mildew and susceptible to pest damage. And so as it gets more hot and humid, that's going to increase the occurrences of those things. So I wouldn't plant any sort of cucumbers or anything. Now, there's always exceptions. I wouldn't do tomatoes or potatoes, like white potatoes, stuff like that. But with cucumbers, there are exceptions. Like, technically it's not a cucumber, but it's ivy gourd or perennial cucumber. There is something called a Zambian cucumber that I'm trying out. This is my second time trying it. The vine looks pretty good. It's still too small. I haven't gotten any fruit off of it yet. I have gotten some of the perennial cucumber, but it's growing, but it hasn't fruited a lot yet. But in general, don't plant those sort of things. If you want to grow some sort of pumpkin or squash, your best bet is to try with Seminole pumpkins, because they are, meant for this area. Same thing with like Everglades tomatoes. If you just are dead set, you're going to try to grow tomatoes this time of year, I would say try to grow Everglades tomatoes. I still don't know if you're going to have success getting it going, but try Everglades tomatoes because they are meant for here. But there are some things that, don't have an issue with heat and humidity and rainfall. Okra is one of them. Now, I have a love-hate relationship with okra. Not that I don't like eating it. I love eating it. I really like okra. But I've never been able to have a very successful okra season. I can never get the plants to be really vibrant, and I can't get them to produce a lot of pods. So, but okra is one because okra is in the hibiscus family. Hibiscus is a very tropical plant. It likes the heat and the humidity, and the water from like in the rainfall stuff doesn't bother it. Any of your southern peas, so like black-eyed peas, also called cow peas. Look for any of those kind of. I actually use black-eyed peas as a ground cover. So if I've got sections that I want to try to add some nitrogen or fix some nitrogen into the soil, I'll just sow some black-eyed peas. And I've talked about it in previous videos that you don't need to go to the seed store to buy black-eyed peas. Just go to your grocery store and buy like a bag of dried black-eyed peas for like $2, and that will work just fine. I bought a bunch of bags of them, and I mixed it with some lentils and some other things and just put it in a gallon-sized bag, and I will just go out and sow those when I want to try to. I don't really have any luck with the lentils or anything like that, but nevertheless, I threw some garbanzos in there, that sort of thing. I'm not myself, I don't like black-eyed peas. Just a side note, the southern peas are not my favorite thing to eat, but they grow so well, and the heat and humidity and rainfall don't bother it in the slightest. And you really don't have to. You can be as tidy with it as you want to, or you can be like I do. I go out and just literally throw it on the ground, and it will germinate and grow, and it will. You don't have to trellis it. You don't have to do it. You just let it go, and you'll get a good crop of black-eyed peas or whatever southern peas, because they are meant for they're from a hot area, so the heat doesn't bother them. Another thing, you can't really grow white potatoes right now in Florida, so, but you can grow potato alternatives. There are 3 potato alternatives that do really well in Florida. and the heat doesn't bother them. Humidity, pests, even if they get some pest pressure, they just bounce right back, or it's not enough to bother it. One of them is sweet potato, and there's various varieties of sweet potato, so you can take your pick which one you want to grow. One of them is cassava, also called yucca, and one of them is true yams. So like your winged yam, your nyame, your ube, those are all potato-like. You can replace potatoes with these 3 root crops, and they do very well in the heat. They actually prefer the heat. The pests, especially with the yams and the cassava, pests don't bother them at all. I have had issues with, I won't say I've had pest issues with my sweet potatoes, but you will see that, there are bugs that will eat the sweet potato leaves, but unless you have a plague-sized swarm of bugs that come through and eat your vines, it doesn't matter. If you can have vines with holes all in the leaves, and it doesn't bother them in the slightest. Now, I say kind of pest issue because in my area I've got a lot of rabbits, and they are very fond of at least the orange sweet potato, like your standard orange sweet potato that you buy at any grocery store. They really like to eat the vines, and they have caused some issues for me in the past because they'll eat the entire vine. Now the potato underground has to start pushing more, and sometimes if it does it too much, it can end up not coming back. I have had that happen. It only happened once that they ate it so much that it didn't come back, but it has happened, so that's something to keep in mind. If you have an area that has a lot of rabbits, or if you have mice, or if you have rats and stuff like that that's going to eat that kind of thing, then just keep in mind you may need to, fence in your garden, or, somehow guard your sweet potatoes from getting eaten. I have also had issues with sweet potatoes when you go to dig them up, not getting a good harvest, or you get a harvest but they're all very small, or depending on the scenario, sometimes bugs underground have eaten through them and it has rotted. Like the sweet potato has taken on too much water, and the root, the tuber itself has rotted underground. But so it's not that it doesn't have its issues that you have to prepare for, but sweet potatoes, cassava, and yams are potato replacements that do very well in Florida and have no issues with our heat. You can grow hot peppers and watermelon in the heat of the summer. However, I don't grow them. I don't like hot peppers, and I don't like watermelon, so I don't know if it's too late to plant them now. You could always try and see what happens, but yeah. But then when you're looking at, if you want to look at greens, if you want to grow greens for salad and stuff like that, any of your tropical greens, so like sisu spinach, I have a bunch of Lagos spinach growing right now. It's doing very well. You can plant longevity spinach, you can plant Egyptian spinach, Nigerian spinach. Now, there is a distinction. There's a certain kind of Nigerian spinach that I've grown that looks completely different than I planted this Lagos spinach, which is also called Nigerian spinach. They look totally different, and they taste slightly different as well, but both of them will do well in the heat. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Chaya, or it's also called Mexican tree spinach, does well in the heat. Technically you can eat sweet potato leaves. Technically you can eat cassava leaves. Now, with chaya and cassava leaves, you have to cook them. You cannot eat them raw. And then you've got Okinawa spinach, Jewel of Opar. There's all of these weird sounding tropical spinach varieties that come from, Southeast Asia or something like that. They all do very well in the heat and the humidity, and they don't really have pest pressure and all that stuff. So give that a try. I've really enjoyed the Lago spinach. It tastes maybe a hint more bitter than like your grocery store spinach, but it still is a good. You can eat it raw. You can eat it cooked. A lot of times, what I do is I just throw it in the freezer, and then we'll put it in smoothies or something like that. You can also grow cranberry hibiscus, which cranberry hibiscus, you don't want to just go eat a whole bowl full of cranberry hibiscus. It is high in oxalate. And if you have issues with kidney stones, I would say to avoid it. But cranberry hibiscus is good to, if you want to add it to a salad or something like that, or just pull some leaves off and snack on it. It tastes very good. You can make tea with the leaves. I've never tried it, but I imagine it would be good. It has like a tart flavor, and the plant is like a blood red color. And when it blooms, it's a hibiscus, so it looks like a hibiscus flower, but it's like blood red. It's so cool looking. You can grow roselle, also called Jamaican sorrel, and this one you don't use it for the leaves. What you do is you take the calyxes of the flowers after it blooms, and you can eat them, you can freeze them and add them to smoothies or whatever. The most common way is to make tea with them. You steep them and make tea. If you've ever had hibiscus tea, that's what it's made out of. This is another hibiscus variety. And you can also make like a chutney with it that tastes a lot like cranberry sauce, and it's very, very good. So all those things grow really well. If you're wanting to grow something that is more ornamental, you're just wanting flowers, something like that, my biggest piece of advice would be to go plant native plants. Find a nursery near you that has, native firebush, that has, any native flowers to the state, whether it be if you're looking for a ground cover or if you're looking for a shrub or something like that, because you're going to have to do seriously almost zero work to get that to grow, because this is where it wants to grow anyways. So basically, once you get it established, you just forget about it, leave it alone, because it's going to take care of itself. So yeah, if you're wanting to grow to attract pollinators, just to have a nice flower bed, whatever, go native. And I'm not, I've talked about this before too, I'm not one of those native only kind of people, but I'm just saying it's very, very easy to grow native plants because they don't require a lot of work. This is where they would grow anyways. And then as far as it goes, if you're getting a lot of rain, I would say that right now is not a bad time to plant fruit trees, because plant them and let the rain, because when you first plant a fruit tree, especially if it's young, it needs a lot of water. It needs a lot of water to get those roots to really get down into the soil and spread out and start finding its own nutrients. If you plant a fruit tree or a nut tree and you just leave it, then most of the time it's going to die, because it just doesn't have what it needs to get established. But if you plant it when it's in a rainy season and you're getting consistent rain, then you can plant it and let it get rain, every day, every other day, and it will help it to establish without you having to do a lot of work. I would go on and check out, just do a search on some good trees to plant now in wherever you are in Florida, or wherever you are, but I'm specifically talking about Florida because that's where I am. Make sure that you're not planting a fruit tree that it really doesn't like to be messed with in the heat or whatever. But I'm saying from a watering perspective, if you're getting steady rain, then it will water the new tree in for you without you having to spend a lot of time with the hose, with the sprinkler, with the gardening, with the watering can, all that sort of stuff. So that's just some ideas. I'm sure most people have heard of these before, but like I said, I've been seeing a lot of people, especially people who are new to this, new to Florida or new to gardening or whatever, and they want to plant something, they're just not sure what to plant because it's hot and it's humid and bugs and lots of rain and it's unpredictable weather and all this sort of stuff. So these are just some ideas. And then when we get into our fall season, even though it stays hot here, you can start adding in some of the other things, like maybe some tomatoes, maybe some melon or something like that. So anyways, that's it for now. I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you next time.